Folks, I'd like to welcome you to another session with the Militia of Montana. What we're going to talk about this time is surviving it. We've taken you through Enemies Foreign and Domestic Part 1, The Problem. Now that we know how serious it is, and by the way, if you haven't watched it, we suggest that you get a hold of a copy and have a look at how serious things are in our nation. What we mean by surviving it is if you can't eat it, wear it, or shoot it, do you really need it? What good are your guns and bullets if your stomach is empty and your feet are bloody or frozen? What good does it do to have all the preparedness on earth if you haven't put away food or water to sustain life? And what I'd like to share with you to start with is a number of articles out of news clippings, news releases from magazines and newspapers. The first one I'd like to present to you is wheat prices soar to record high. The green bug invasion threatens wheat crops. It will cost you more to eat. This is from Grand Forks, North Dakota, last November. Crop problems. Export success fuels price increases. And also the NAFTA program is not working. Food seen as next environmental crisis from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, January 15th of last year. Food banks bare as government supplies disappear. Now, my family and I are involved in food distribution for the needy in our communities, and we take it real serious when we can't come up with food for the needy. So we better start finding other answers, folks, and that's what we're going to get into here in a bit. Plan by Census Bureau would erase many American farms, read the headlines, according to Associated Press. In the Tampa Tribune, January 20th of this year, there's a picture showing the grain going into the bins from a field that looks very bountiful, but it says, the headlines actually read, grain shortage, a growing problem. Conditions indicate that there is at least some vulnerability in the food supply. And we have a picture that shows bare shelves and people raiding the shelves to gather food. The cover story is of the 12th of January of this year by USA Today. Blizzard gives market frenzy new meaning. Along those same lines, they were using the U.S. Army reserves to remove food or remove snow in Virginia, Arlington, Virginia. And the article talks about the storm. It says, people have become kind of primitive, said Lynn Day, a psychologist in Roanoke, Virginia. They are getting ugly in public right now. My husband said he saw two people fighting over a carton of milk in the grocery store. We had information ourselves that came from police officers in Pennsylvania, where the National Guard was actually rationing the food, taking it off the shelves, the milk and the bread, and delivering it to the needy in hospitals and retirement centers away from the families. Now we have one from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. It talks about corn, wheat futures zoom. There's a chance we may actually run out of corn and wheat. From the institute that's called the World Watch, President Lester Brown has this to say: grain stocks falling to their lowest levels in 2 decades. Then out of the Wall Street Journal, January 10th of this last year, there's an article entitled Blueprint for Managing Food Care. What does that mean? And in Kansas, just recently we had a clipping come through. Dry and devastated land. It shows up to 99% of the hard red winter wheat crop has been destroyed by a drought. The headlines read, Kansas wheat dying of thirst. U.S. suspends wheat exports due to infected crop. What does that mean? Officials declare wheat quarantine. Salt Lake City, Associated Press. Agricultural officials have declared a wheat quarantine to prevent crop-destroying fungus from taking root in Utah. We have another article called Seeds of Destruction. The spread of fungus poses threat to U.S. wheat harvest. It's called carnal knowledge. That's with a K. What is carnal bunt? A fungus spread by an airborne spore that shrinks wheat grain, reduces yield, and gives it an unpalatable fishy smell. Where is it? In California, Arizona, Texas, and New Mexico. How did it get here? Probably via storm clouds from Mexico, or I'd like to suggest probably from a laboratory somewhere, to reduce our production in this nation. Where did it come from? It was first detected in the town of Carmel, India in the 1930s, and has since spread throughout India, as well as Pakistan, Turkey, Mexico, and now in the U.S. Well, we all know the story on what happened to India, the starving people there. And if you'd seen our last videotape, Enemies, Foreign and Domestic Part 1, The Problem, you'd understand why that we perceive this food shortage problem as being man-made. Now in the Missoulian this last April, it talks about heartland drought. Now the word heartland has a special meaning to many people in our nation that's done some research on what is planned for us in the future here. An extended dry spell across the breadbasket of the U.S. is now predicted to wipe out much of this season's wheat crop. Despite a day of heavy rain which dampened some of the region, some of the fields are 100% dead. Rain will not bring them back. Adding to the farmers' woes are infestations of green bugs and brown wheat mites. So what are we going to do, folks? We may think that the food comes from the 7-Eleven store or IGA or Super Value. Well, I think you're wrong. The food comes from our farms. Our farms are being shut down. In the 80s, they were being dropped about 3,000 a day across America. And no one was seeming to come to help them because they'd gotten involved in this financial trap. And we see this financial trap going all across our state still today. This now you see it, now you don't expanding dollar made by this feudal Federal Reserve that's not federal, and there's nothing in reserve. It's a private corporation. Now grains, if you want to get involved in the future of supporting our nation's people, get involved in taking your money out of Wall Street or wherever you may have it invested and put it into your farm. Put it into the farmer so he doesn't have to go to the banks and make himself so vulnerable to foreclosure. And when it's time for him to harvest, be there to purchase his grain instead of being sent to Cargill and sent overseas. Be a part of our nation again, folks. I'd like to read a little poem here by Gary North in one of his latest books that he wrote. This poem is entitled Lullaby of Wall Street. Rockabye dreamers in the treetop. When the Fed slows, your cradle will drop. When the Dow breaks, the dreamers will fall. And down will come dreamers, pensions and all. That's why I suggested you put it where it belongs, into the land. All wealth comes from the land, and so do our lives, folks. Now, folks, before we get into gardening and procurement of food in the gardens that we grow, in the event we don't have the opportunity to do that, be it caused by something natural or just don't have the availability, let's talk about gathering food from the wild. We've got many training videos and books. We even have a deck of cards here that would show you how to gather food in the wild. This particular one is just plain old pine. It tells you what you can eat from it, how it'll benefit you. Here, the other one I want to talk about is just plain old yarrow. If you want to know what the ace of spades is, if you're going to cheat and play cards with your neighbor with these cards, which is a plain deck of cards that has all the instructions of how to use yarrow on the one side, and it has the picture of the plant itself on the other side. If you want to know what your opponent is holding, learn what the cards are by what's on the back side of them here. So it's kind of a way of cheating, but it forces you to learn these cards so you can learn yourself what's in your neighborhood and how you can utilize it when you can't grow a garden or can't harvest what's in your garden. Now I want to get into gardening itself. We have a book here that's Self-Sufficiency Gardening. It's tremendous tips about how to put your life together with gardening. In addition to that, we have a book called Basic Preparedness, and that's what we'll be concentrating on for the most part right now. Basic Preparedness is a guide for preparing yourself to be totally self-reliant. Processing foods, for instance, how would you process your foods? What is the best way to put your foods away? Nutritional values and life storage of the foods, what is the best way to put it away? Obviously one of the best is freeze-dry, but most of us are incapable of having the ability to do that, so the only thing we could do in that aspect is to purchase it. Other than that, air drying the foods ourselves. We have food dryers that are natural for air drying, or we have electric. You could just hang the air dry ones outside to have the moisture evaporated out of them, or you could run your electric bulb and dry it however way you want to do it. Or the grains and beans and seeds, etc., that come out of the field are already naturally dried when they're harvested. Or you could can stuff, but of all four of the ways to put food away, canning, I'm sorry ladies, is the least efficient way to do it. It has a very short shelf life. It loses the nutritional value very rapidly. Within 6 months to a year, your nutritional value drops. It's very heavy to tote if you have to move it around. It can freeze, it can break. And the most that you'll have out of putting away food like that is 3 years. But grains, the way they produce them in the fields, the way you take them from it, I'm not talking about fields that use herbicides and pesticides and all the other suicides. I'm talking about natural grains. You know, the biggest reason that we have little bugs that destroy our grain is because the grain's not fit to eat anyway, and they're just trying to put it back into the ground. The storage life on good grain is indefinite, 15 to 20 years. The storage life on air-dried foods is 4 to 7 years. The storage life on freeze-dried foods is at least 10 years or more. But you need to learn this yourself. This is one of the objects that I wanted you to have a look in this book. Now, food storage, how much do we put away? Remember, the first war this nation suffered from was 8 years long. And I don't know that they had a 7-Eleven store or an IGA to go to buy their daily victuals. I think what the folks had to do back then is fend for themselves. There was a lot of starvation problems way back when, especially with the boys when the war finally started to survive. They had a very tough time eating. So how would you put food away? How much would you put away? For instance, hard red winter wheat. The average consumption of hard red winter wheat, say for the average female adult, would be 250 pounds a year. How much do we have put away? If it would be grains or corn, like in corn or barley, oats, etc., it would be 120 pounds. You can't eat just one, and if you don't know how to prepare it, you need to learn how to do that also. What about lentils or soybeans or peas or pinto beans? The average female is 45 pounds per year. Now, I'm not talking about just the kernel, you eat it this way. I'm talking about the various ways that it's been prepared for you, whether it be through a cereal box or however you've been eating it, through bread, etc. This is the normal consumption. Now, what we want to do at this point is break away and show you how we actually put this food away into containers, just in case there are some of you that may not know this. Now, folks, before we get into just the little particulars on how we fill and take care of the bucket, I want to talk about at least one company that has containers of all sorts, all shapes and sizes, plastic, metal, etc., from little buckets like this to great big 55 and larger gallon drums that are all sealed. The guy's name is Wayne. He's at Eagle Peak Container in northern Idaho, and we'll furnish you with the particulars on it. Well, what we'd like to do here now is show you how we take care of preserving our food. What we're going to put away in this bucket, this is a 4-gallon rectangular bucket like they use at industrial laundromats. This is a recycled bucket, I think, for $1 or whatever they charge. We use bay leaves in a sandwich bag, 3-4 bay leaves in a bag, and then we poke holes in the bags. And the reason that we do this is to prevent weevils from getting in to our grains and foods that we preserve. We put one at the bottom, and then we pour our contents in. Hopefully it'll fit into here. This happens to be plain old beans. We try to get it as full as we can so that if it ends up in an area where equipment is running over the top of it, it won't smash it, so that it'll be self-supporting. Well, we almost have enough to fill it here. And when we're done putting that in, we put another set of bay leaves in the top, another sandwich bag with 3-4 bay leaves, punching holes in it also, so that any chance of weevils coming around is not going to like what happens here when they get involved with this stuff. Then we seal it up, a nice tight seal. and we leave the handles off. After we've put it in a hole, now the holes that we dig are very shallow, and we try to put them in areas where there's a lot of flat rock. There's two reasons for that. If it's shallow, the satellites that would snoop in your backyard or wherever you put your food, someone else's property like Forest Service or something, is not as easy to detect as if you dig down deeper, because the further down you go, the more the soil has compacted itself and the easier it is for a satellite to detect it. And we say a shaly, rocky area because that's the most difficult area to detect, because things don't pack down there. And it's very hard to dig through, but it's well worth it. They can't detect it in those areas. So when you get it dug out, and we don't just bury one bucket at a time, it's like a dozen or so. And we don't just put in beans or grain. We put in the essentials that we're going to need in the future, like, for instance, the various grains, a sweetener like honey or molasses, preferably non-sulfured sweet molasses, some type of cooking oil. We ourselves use olive oil, and then salt, preferably sea salt, something that has all the natural ingredients in it instead of just sodium chloride, which is a poison to you. And when we get the hole dug exactly the size that we want, just probably 4, 5, 6 inches down, so that the buckets are 4, 5, 6 inches under the surface, we put a tarp in first, a large enough tarp to where that when we put our buckets in, we can fold the tarp over several ways. Now we take the handles off of our buckets, if I can figure out how to do this here, so that there's no metal to trace the products that we put away. And then we take the tarps and we fold it up 4 different ways so that there's no chance of moisture coming back in here. And after we've accomplished that, what we do, just say it's 4 ways now over all of our buckets. After we do that, we put some rope on top, and I'll get to that in a second. We just spread the rope out so it's not all linked together like this. And after we're done with that, spreading out over the top, we take another tarp or so. Now this particular tarp here came from a lumber yard. It was gotten free of charge. It's about 9 by 20 feet for nothing. That's the best price there is to pay for a tarp, I'd say, or anything else. And it's white on one side, it's dark in color on the other side, so if you're in a winter surrounding and you need a shelter, which is what all this here stuff is all about, not only to protect your food, but a shelter. So when you come to your area, bearing in mind that it could be that your environment is the worst enemy at the time, you take this rope and you run it from tree to tree, and you throw your tarp over it, and you automatically have yourself a shelter. So what you must do is try to find an area that's not going to be exposed to standing water, that may be a little raised from the other areas, and if you have extra dirt in the area, or rock or whatever it is in the area, when you're done doing your little deed there and you want to camouflage it very nicely with things to put over it, you don't leave this dirt standing around in a pile right next to where you've worked, of course. You take it away, or you just make an extra little radius out of it so it shreds water away better than ever, so that nothing's standing around your goods here. But please don't put metal where you put your food. In whatever metal you're talking about, just get it out of there. And then after you've buried it and you have to use it, how do you use it? That's where we come up with a book called Cooking with Home Storage. It gives you tremendous ideas of how to use what you've put away. Many people can put stuff away, but they're probably going to starve to death wondering what they're going to do about it now that they have to use it. So we have to figure out what to do beyond these points to survive. It's whatsoever you think, I guess, is what you're going to be or what you're going to do. But you have to have thought it through. You have to have applied your heads to your hands to survive what's coming, folks. Folks, perhaps one of the most important things of all that we have to deal with is water. We can go for days or weeks without food, depending on what we're doing, but we can only go for hours or a few days without water, probably 3 days the most, before your cells start to deteriorate. So what do you do about water? We've got water that comes out of a tap in the city that's at the hand of someone else, and your health is at the hands of someone else, depending on what they would like to put in there. For instance, certain cities in our country have had additives put to their water, and when talked to the hydrologists, they have no idea why they were ordered to add LZX-280. In these cities, we are told, that have had this added as an experiment, we've had high suicide rates continuing on for quite some time. Now, what we'd like to suggest is to make yourselves a little less vulnerable, a little more independent instead of interdependent. After all, cities are a very unnatural system against nature, not toward nature. So what we'd like to see you do is start putting away water here and there, wherever where you can, especially if you live in areas where you know there's no streams, no access to water. If you live in aerated areas, perhaps what you'd want to do is bury some type of containers, like 55-gallon drums in the ground just under the surface. So when you have what we call a portable filter system that assembles and you can actually pump water with it. It comes with hoses. It's very backpackable. You could take one of the hoses that connect to the unit and put into your container in the ground that no one knows is there, and fill up your water container again to move on to your next area wherever you have to go, or just to sustain life as what may be the cause, the necessity. Now what we'd also like to talk about is this little container here that clips to anybody's belt. You have to have a belt, preferably, to hold this. And to purify the water that's in there, if you have to end up getting your water from some area that you're not sure of, you would want to take along something called iodine tablets to put in the water, and all the directions are on this little tiny bottle here to give you instructions as to how to use it, how much to put in there to purify it for yourself. Also, the container that you put in the ground should have some type of preservative to it. What we recommend is 35% food-grade hydrogen peroxide, 1 ounce for every 50 gallons of water. And if you can possibly recycle it every 6 months, your water, to make sure it stays good and uncontaminated. But without water, I don't know how far you can go, how long you can survive. The books that we have to offer you about survival in various areas give you many tips on how to survive with water that you've stashed away, or even water that you'd gather off of plants or tree leaves, etc., certain times of the day. So keep that in mind, please, folks. Folks, if you remember, the statement that we made when we first started this little project was, if you can't eat it, wear it, or shoot it, do you really need it? What good are your guns and bullets if your stomach is empty and your feet are bloody or frozen? What we need to talk about now is surviving the elements. There's a book that we have. It's made by the military. It's about cold weather survival. It's one of the many different books that we have and tapes that we have on survival. Some of the tapes that we have are actually produced by people that live it every day of their lives in the wilds, and they've produced from what they've learned the hard way. Now these are a set of cold weather boots. They match the environment. Well, they're supposed to be white. They're a little dirty white now. But these boots and other articles of clothing, as I'll show you when we go through this here, were purchased for little or nothing in off-season at surplus stores, at Army stores, second-hand stores, or garage sales, which is the best place to pick up things. Now this is a whole set of cold weather gear. It's the pants, the jacket, well, there's a scarf in there too, leather suspenders, even a East German officer's cap to go with it. Between the boots, the cap, and the jacket, the pants, and the suspenders, I have $52 in it. It'll take care of just about everything there is for cold, cold weather. But the worst cold that you have to worry about is wet cold. So you need something to protect yourself from wet cold more than anywhere else or any other position, because if it's a dry cold, you can always do something. You can get the environment to protect you, be it branches of trees or whatever may be out there. But wet cold, it's pretty hard to get dry if you couldn't start a fire, for instance. Now this is just a plain old poncho that makes into a tent or a half a tent. So if you share it with your friends, if they have another one, you can have two of them together and have a decent sized tent and have virtually nothing for weight. Absolutely, just ounces, not even a pound. Now some of the other gear that we need to talk about are your old BDUs. If you go to a store, a surplus store, and buy used BDUs, you've really just bought plain clothing. You might as well go to any other store that's got the cheapest price on this pattern of clothing and buy it. But what we're really talking about is the impregnation of infrared reflectance in here to break up the body pattern. That's why when troops go to a special operations in a foreign country, etc., or maybe even our own country soon, they have brand new suits or uniforms issued to them to make sure that they don't have the pattern that would allow someone to detect them. So that's why we insist on not washing these, not using them unless we need them. Besides, for me to identify people like this running around in my backyard or in my woods, I'd be a little upset and I'd take a pot shot at them. Also hats to keep you dry, things to put various objects so you blend into the forest better around your hat. And if you've got bugs or mosquitoes, this is one way to take care of it. Actually, I believe there's a product called Skin So Soft by Avon that does a wonderful job, probably better than any other system out there to keep you clean from bugs. It's all you need to be swatting at bugs when you're supposed to be quiet. This is a space blanket. It's wonderfully light and easy to work with. It's not all that noisy. It's very functional when it comes to keeping you warm. It reflects the heat right back in at you, and it'll help keep you from being spotted by some of the electronic equipment out there if you don't touch it. If you have to shield yourself and hide in the forest or wherever you're at from a helicopter looking for you, the best way to do it is to put an object like the butt of your rifle or perhaps a stick or something to hold it from your body so your body is at least a half a foot away. Because if your fingers are touching it, they will see the infrared from your fingers through this and detect what's under it. Now, as far as sleeping bags go, there's all different types. This particular sleeping bag packs into this little bag right here. It's a huge bag. It keeps you warm to about 40, 50 below. And it'll float down the creek with you in it. I suggest not doing that because you'll take on water around the neck here. But it's a waterproof proof unit. It's very comfortable. It's not very cheap. I forget even what they cost now, but that type of material is extremely important to have around you. Now, this is a U.S. military extreme cold bag. It weighs about 8 pounds. It's plenty heavy to carry, which is about what the other one weighed that I showed you. This one is not waterproof, but it rolls out to about the same configuration as the other one. It's not quite as much room, and it doesn't cost quite as much. Military surplus. They've done a pretty good job on these bags. They call it the Extreme Cold Mummy Bag, and they make them from this size all the way down to the 30, 40 above bags, which is just nothing but bare cover for you. So what do you do with your clothing when it's time to put it away? Get it out of your place. You need something to put it into. What we've done is put all kinds of clothing, be it fall weather gear or cami clothing or sleeping equipment, or just plain going to surplus stores and picking up surplus boots or hats or gloves or fall weather gear or just clothes, big, little, infant, whatever it might be, and putting into 55-gallon sealable drums. We do not put mothballs in with our clothing because we believe that it's a scent that can be detected. It's an unnatural scent for the forest. If you want to keep bugs away from your clothing, put them in there clean in the first place and put pine boughs or something in there with it. It does a wonderful job of disguising or taking away the scent for you so you can travel through the forest just fine or wherever you may have to go. But these drums, it's very important to put them away in a good, secure, shielded area that's airtight, watertight, and get them away from your homes also. There's going to be a lot of people coming that are going to need your help, and you're going to have to be prepared, at least to some extent, to helping these folks out. So whatever you can do to put clothing away, please do it. It doesn't cost much if you buy a pair of shoes for a quarter or 50 cents at a garage sale, or a coat for a child for 2 bits or $1 or whatever it might be. You're not going to miss it that much, but they're sure going to miss it if they're starting to freeze to death out there, and you'll wish you'd done it sooner, folks. Get prepared. This segment is entitled Medical, be it supplies or your ability to deal with what you have for supplies and the confrontation of problems in front of you. We have a series of 5 videotapes that was produced and condensed down from probably 20 hours of a session that we had in Montana. We had invited a man from the military who's retired now by the name of Chuck Fenwick. He had been in 3 different parts of the military. He had been in the theater of war twice. He's a paramedic. His dad was a paramedic in World War II. He's a man, Chuck is a man that can talk the layman's language like I am. I'm a plowboy, and it takes a plain old ordinary language to talk to me so that I understand it. And that's what these videotapes are based on. The first videotape of these series of 5, which is called Combat Medicine, by the way, is called Battle Dressings. It's a tape that's almost 2 hours long, and it's very self-explanatory about how serious things are in regards to dressings. The second one, part 2, is called Fractures. Obviously, how to put splints on and repair broken bones, etc. The third one is about minor surgery, which is a part that I'm not familiar with at all, and I guess that's why other people are, and that's why we have stuff like this lying around that some people know how to use. The fourth one is entitled Thermal Injuries, Airwaves, and Triage. It's a very complicated tape. It's not the longest one of them all, but it tells you who to treat first, etc. The last of the series is Shock. It is a shocking revelation of how serious things can really get if you let them get out of hand. Now, this man has also, after having produced these tapes, has gone around the country and has started trying to organize people under his medical corps all across the country. Those of you that want to get involved, we'll show you how to get in touch with Mr. Fenwick from northern Minnesota to practice, to be prepared, to be organized for what seems to be coming down the pike at us. One little thing I'd like to just share with you here is a bandage, a silly little 4x4 bandage that the military offers. You can pick it up for 50, 75 cents or a buck or whatever they're worth today. This little bandage could save someone's life. You know, if the medical facilities are non-functioning and you need to plug up a wound on someone, how do you do it if you don't have the material around to do it with? One of these could save someone's life. If you can't replace the blood, you better stop it from flowing out, don't you think? It's a real simple task to learn how to do some of these basics to prevent death. Now, I want to go back to a book that we've been talking about earlier called Basic Preparedness. This book covers a lot of different things, and medical being one of them. Some of the basics that they talk about to stock up on are bandages, Band-Aids, Q-tips, scissors, scallops, surgical tape, thermometers, eyeglasses, or eyeglass to wash out eyes with, flashlight, aspirin, hydrogen peroxide, olive oil, cayenne pepper, snake bite kits, you bet. Some of the other things in this little book, homeopathic first aid, how to use the natural herbs for this purpose, herbs like aloe, chamomile, chaparral, dandelion, golden seal, nettles, rose hips, yarrow. We hear that the government is anticipating shutting the herbal business down real soon, so it may not be a bad idea to start looking at stocking up on this merchandise very quickly. Now, some of the herbs also in this booklet, some of the herbs that are talked about are herbs that can be used for problems such as allergies, which would be bee pollen or comfrey, or burns, which would be aloe vera or comfrey, muscle cramps, which you would use alfalfa or black cohosh, infection, golden seal or rose hips, sprains, golden seal. I mean, it goes on and on and on, what you can do here to suffice what's coming along. Also, what we have is a book called The Shepherd's Purse. This book is very thorough in how to prepare. It goes beyond most books I know of. It even shows you how to prepare tinctures, fluid extracts, etc., so that you can be prepared without going to the stores if they shut off the supply to us. Make your own. Now, people think that it's just going to take a little bit of studying to get through all this here. Well, I've not studied like I should have, and I've studied some. But we've got a bunch of books here, and I'm guilty as most. I've not read all these books. When would we ever have the time? This is just a few more books of what we have available to us on what you can do to prepare for what's coming if there's no doctor around. As a matter of fact, some of the books are actually called If There's No Doctor. So, folks, I guess that's about all I have for this little segment here. All I ask is that you get involved by getting informed and passing the information on to others. The next subject, folks, is shelters. Before we get into it, I just want to name a few of the books that we have. Shelters, Shacks, and Shanties, Wilderness Living and Survival Skills, Survival Itself by Janowski from Alaska, and a man that actually lives it. We have videotapes by him and others. There's no excuse not to know what's going on out there and how to prepare yourself for it. Some of the things that we've already gone through, I want to go over again. This is that poncho that I was trying to find the hood part for a little while ago. This poncho and another one just like it will make a tent So if you get together and purchase ponchos like this, you'll have tents as you wear them to protect from the cold out there or from the rain out there. We had talked about tarps, ropes to run between trees, tarps to collect inexpensively from logging operations or lumber yards, space blankets. Remember, don't allow the space blanket to touch you if you've got choppers looking for you. These are very efficient, but they're not quite as efficient as other things like this. But before we get into that, I want to talk about tents. Now, I paid about 79 or 80 bucks for this tent. They say it's a 3-man tent, so you can probably get 2 people in there, but it takes about 2-3 minutes to set up. It weighs about 8 pounds. This one here, they say, is a five-man tent. It's a pop-up. It just springs up almost instantly. It takes one person about 60 seconds to do it, not in a windstorm, of course. And it'll sleep comfortably, at least 3, but it weighs 11 pounds. So you may not want to go that way. You may want to think about whatever environment you're living in to utilize the environment itself to protect you. Pine boughs or maybe just a tarp with you. But this particular tarp material here is called Redout 2. It's designed to protect the human body from 5 different electronic ways to find you. It's also usable to protect your gear, your equipment if you bury it, or if you're toting it along in your vehicle or hiding it in your house, because the electronics, including satellites, cannot see through this. The man that makes this here is called All-American Patriot out of Florida. Steve is the guy's name. We can put you in touch with him if you wish. In addition to this material, there's something you should know. In 1965, they removed lead-based paint from the market. That's the same year they sent up the first satellite. Do you think there's a connection there? Maybe the satellites had a problem with lead-based paint. After all, I've never seen a kid chew on the corner of my home. Why did I have to get rid of my lead-based paint? During the Randy Weaver siege in northern Idaho, there were people that attempted to come to his rescue from all over the country. They had put a firearm or 2 in the trunk, yet they got stopped before they ever got near the Randy Weaver siege area. They had told no one. How did law enforcement know they were carrying firearms? Because the eye in the sky could see through the metal in the vehicles, detect what was inside, because there no longer was lead-based paint there. So I guess one of the points I'd like to make during this little talk is if you can find old military-style lead-based surplus paint or lead powder to put in your paint, probably wouldn't be a bad idea to think about it. If you can't do that, then try to acquire some of this Redout 2 material, which is far superior to the space blankets, etc. Now, this Redout 2 material can be used in many fashions. It can be used to save heat inside your home, use as insulation, and protect from satellite snooping, and from infrared sensors detecting where the human body is inside your home, etc., etc. At any rate, you need to protect yourself from what's coming. You need to be prepared by studying and rubbing shoulders with other folks. This segment is entitled Energy, Travel, and Communications. The reason we're doing this is because we suspect problems coming up in the near future with all 3. For about 10 years, I produced my own energy from wind. When I moved to the part of Montana that I live in now, I ran out of wind. But during that 10 years, I had less power problems. I had power more often than my neighbors who were hooked to the power grid. I produced from wind, from drain oil, and from diesel fuel. I was almost never without power. Today, we may be having to look at that again. With the controls on energy, we have fuel rising for no apparent reason. We have all sorts of controls put on us. The whole object of we the people should be to be independent, not interdependent. Excuse me. The fuels that we have are very curious. Gasoline, for instance, has a shelf life of only 8 months. The normal additives that you would put into them seem to do nothing. Although we've experimented with someone that produces an additive, we'll just call the additive PAT. It does work. It's about $2.50 for a 2-ounce treatment that does about 8 to 10 gallons of gasoline. And it lasts indefinitely with the fuels that are available today, which are the short shelf life. We also hear excuse me, that there are shorter shelf life fuels in the process of coming along right now. Now, the military used to run on diesel fuel. Now, I know many of us don't feel very comfortable about the dirty ping-and clang-and banging overweight, underpowered, stinking diesel engines, but they have their purpose. They require no electricity to run. It's total compression that ignites the fuel. So we may want to reconsider there some of the options. The systems that the military used to run on was JP-4 and JP-5 in their fighters and choppers. JP-5 was the heavy aircraft, and diesel fuel was that of the diesels in their tanks. However, we hear that through various sources that it's all switched to JP-8, which makes it very difficult for us to use that particular fuel in any type of engine that we the people have. So we'll have to analyze very carefully. If anyone has information on this, please contact us and we'll put it out to the American public. In regards to communications, we have problems with radio systems that we're looking at here in the future because of the HAARP program in Alaska, H-A-A-R-P.
Here. Oh, 9 out.
Hey, see what I mean there? We've got radios that work. Our radio systems need to be functional, need to be chargeable from whatever source we have around. Now, this particular radio, you can charge it from the wall, or you can charge it from your automobile or somebody else's car that's just sitting there. It takes about 2.5 hours to charge this battery, and the battery lasts about 100 hours if it's not scanning. But in the scanning mode, it's about 24 hours. It takes 2.5 to charge from a vehicle that's running, or a vehicle that's sitting. It takes about 8 to trickle charge. Other batteries that are used are CB sideband shortwave combination radios with high amp boosters. Excuse me. But what's going to happen when the systems that they have available shut us down? What will we go to then for communications? Will we go to the fire siren, the school bell, the smoke signal, or hardwire phones? We're going to have to figure this out, folks, long before it hits us, which may not be too much longer. We have to figure out means of communications. People that are on foot and have no communications really are not much of a threat to an imposing force. So we'll have to overcome those things. Another thing that we need to talk about, if it's just so slightly here, would be something called a spark gap generator. Now, I'm told that the military forces have experimented with certain things. The younger fellows that were going through this militia exercise were to do the military's role. They had been trained on the high-tech equipment, and the older folks that were in the military were to act out the role of the militia. Well, the older folks, unbeknown to the young guys, had produced a spark gap generator. Excuse me. This generator was capable of shutting down the communications of the military operations and all but crashing their craft. The young fellows got on the communications and pleaded with the older folks to shut it down, lest you kill us. So we know that there's something to this spark gap generator operation. So if any of you are out there have information on spark gap generators, would like to include it in the document that would be included with this videotape. What we have is a situation that we're looking head on of the inability of we the people to talk to each other, which is extremely serious. We've got C-130s that can fly over an area, shut down communications, and replace with their own communications, as what happened in the Desert Storm situation over there. We have E-4Bs, which are specially made by Boeing aircraft, altered 747s for FEMA, that'll do the same thing. They call them command and control aircraft. Now, you put this all together with the HAARP, the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program, which controls the Northern Hemisphere all by itself, and its little contingency towers called Gwen towers. We don't have much of a chance of communications when they decide to turn things on. So we better learn how to communicate with each other and get our systems functioning properly, folks. Tools and other related items. It was tools in hands like these that built our country from scratch, from nothing. It must be the ability of the American people to be willing to go through this again, to put our country back together if what goes on is allowed to continue on. If we don't have the ability to connect our heads to our hands rather, what do we have for a chance to put our country back together? We must not sever ourselves from our tools, the lifeblood of our future. Hand tools and related items must include at least items like nails and screws and saws of various types, hammers, screwdrivers, wrenches, pliers, repair parts, electrical tape or roofing repair materials like tar paper or tar, gardening tools, shovels and rakes and buckets, etc. For wood and for wood heating, axes and mauls and saws of various types, many various types. Saws that can saw quietly, quieter than an axe, can drop a tree in the enemy's way. Tools can be very essential in many, many ways. Rope and scythe and lumber of various types, sewing machines even. We need to get back to basics, folk. We see these trains coming from foreign countries, or the trains that are bringing stuff from foreign countries constantly on a daily basis. That's our jobs going by us on the rail cars. We must start putting the jobs back into America and stop being concerned about GATT and NAFTA and just shut the country off from these treasonous jerks that have done this to us. We need to bring America back home. We need to be the ma and pa shops that we used to be, creating jobs for each other, sharing things. Now you've got to wonder a little bit if the jobs are going to Mexico, why are the Mexican people coming here? Is it because of the handouts, or is there some big problem in Mexico? Do we foresee what's happened to other countries happening to us here in America? You bet we do. We better be prepared to go for the long haul, to produce for ourselves what we need to survive as a nation. Folks, this segment is called Weapons and Equipment. The first part we want to talk about is ancient tools from the past, like a blowgun, which tribes from various countries used to use. This is the modern man's version of it. It's very effective. It comes in many sizes and shapes. The next one we want to talk about is a crossbow, a hand crossbow, a very effective little tool, very compact. And of course this comes in various shapes and sizes also. And what we call a wrist rocket. This little rocket here, if used properly, will send a steel ball or a small marble up to 500-600 feet per second. And you can get very efficient with this if you practice. But what we're going to home into is, well, let me talk about the earpiece here first. Before you start doing any weapons practice, you should always protect your ears, because you're going to need your ears to very keenly listen to things that go on around you. But what I want to talk about now, for those that are just getting into firearms or newcomers to it, should start out with small weapons so you don't end up getting gun shy. You should learn on the smaller units and progress through them. This is a 22 caliber, 22 long rifle. It's very efficient, up to 150, maybe 200 yards. It's used for many applications. It comes in short, long, and long rifle. This is a 9mm. It has become very popular among a lot of people, although a lot of people in law enforcement are beginning to realize it has a lot of penetration power, but it does not have stopping power like the old 45 caliber has been so popular with. Now, this one's been around since the early 1900s. It's been popular in military applications. It's in part been replaced by the 10mm. But people in the forests where they have a lot of wild game that may be predatory toward them have gone to the 44 caliber, which is a very heavy handgun. It's almost like a rifle and a handgun. As a matter of fact, they do have 44 caliber rifles chambered also. But what we suggest, rather than going with any of this, particularly this in the forest, you can take the heart out of a grizzly bear with one of these, and he'll still go 45 seconds. A grizzly bear that's angered or enraged on adrenaline can do a lot of damage in 45 seconds, can take your head and your limbs off. What we suggest that you go to, and now this is just probably a small version to some of you, now this is pepper spray. This will stop a bear in its tracks. Now I'm not necessarily talking about this size, but it's, smaller sizes of it. will stop a grizzly bear in its tracks, and it'll never want to attack you again, I guarantee you. The smaller versions go down to like a 4-ounce of pepper spray. That'll still do the job, but the gentleman's pen here, and don't be confusing this with Binaca, or it'll be knocking you down. This is also pepper spray that you can put in your pocket and wear like a regular marker. But let's get into the rifle sizes here a little bit. This is a .223. It's shot in the M16 that the military has carried. It's shot in the AR-15, the civilian version of the M16, the Mini-14s, etc. It is a quick bullet, and it is fairly long range, but it is a very light bullet and does not have much for knockdown power. This here one is a .308 caliber. It's used in M60s, etc. It was used in the M14 during the Vietnam era, where they switched from this to this unit right here. When the troops woke up one morning, they found themselves with a little rifle alongside them instead of their M14 .308. They found the .223, and on the side of the plastic of the stock it said made by Mattel, so it was a little hard on their spirits there. The next one I'd like to talk about is a .300 H&H. Now there are many versions in between all this, but this is basically some of the most popular stuff in the mountains, at least around here. This is a .30 caliber like this is, but this is 147 grain. This is a .223 caliber. This is only 55 grain. This knockdown power on this particular one is 400 pounds at 300 yards. This is 1,440 pounds at 300 yards, so I'd much rather use something like this. This is obviously a whole lot more. This is more for hunting or whatever, the silver tip. It's a 200 grain instead of 147, 300 H&H. But now if you want to get into the real reach out and touch situation, I suggest something more like this. This is a 50 caliber BMG. They say the range on this is about as far as the eye can see. We've heard many stories where people have been hunting with tools like this, etc., and have been had a bead drawn on a critter out in the flats in eastern Montana, and the critter all of a sudden just collapsed in front of them. They couldn't figure out why. They didn't realize sitting a mile behind them was, or half a mile behind them, was someone playing with a tool like this. But what I'd like to get into now is a bit of I'll talk about, for instance, the sniping aspect. If you're going to be going through the woods, toting equipment, etc., you need to protect your eyes also. And if your hands are full, you can't be putting your arms up, etc., trying to protect your eyes. So this is probably one of the better ways. It's very light, it collapses very easily, fits in your pocket, to protect your eyes. And once you don't need it, you put it back away in your pocket again. But the sniping aspect, in our little county, we've got stickers and had hats that say, "My county is protected by 5,000 snipers." That's only to say that that's how many hunters are in our county, because every decent hunter is a very good sniper, and they're very, the enemy coming to an area that has a lot of well-trained hunters should be concerned, because it is a viable threat. So with all the equipment that they've had to locate us, and we'll get into that later here, is why we are involved in trying to help people prepare to survive what's coming. Now, a sniper, say that you've sighted your firearm in at 300 yards, and you've got your target out there, and at 300 yards you're right dead on the target, but you come in closer to 100 yards and 200 yards, and you end up shooting way above the target without changing your sights at all. And you back on out to say 400 yards, and you're probably 12, 15 inches below the target. What you would do to know exactly where you're at is take the target home with you and put it on your bedroom wall upside down, so you can understand what the elevation has to be to hold your sights to end up right on target acquisition. There's many more things in regards to sniping, and this whole concept of the tape that we're building is to make you aware of the areas you may be weak in and to point you in the right direction to gather information. That's why we have the information available to you, including the video footage by Janowski, which is a professional sniper, very well trained, and we suggest if you want to get further into that you inquire on his information or those like him. A couple of years ago, we had stated that the New World Order was going to take over through chaos. As our former President Bush had stated, out of chaos shall come the New World Order. Well, we've already had chaos. We've had people sniped, we've had them shot, we've had had them burned at the stake in Waco. We've had buildings blowing up in our country. Now, we're not saying yet that our government did this to us in Oklahoma City, but we're saying they sure as the devil destroyed the evidence. Now, the third thing that we had mentioned a couple of years ago was that they were going to do it through biological warfare. Well, folks, I'm here to tell you that the times are really close for this biological warfare. This is a brand new book that came out by a friend of ours by the name of Steve Quayle and his associate Duncan Long. In the back of this book it says this: "The genie is out of the bottle. Chemical and biological weapons of mass destruction are now in the hands of terrorist arsenals around the world. You are in serious jeopardy if you don't understand the ramifications of the new engineering viruses and molecular engineered biological weapons that are so readily available to terrorists in the world today. Coupled with this threat are the new Novichok series of chemical weapons that the Soviets have designed. As little as 500 pounds can kill 500,000 people. Can you read the handwriting on the wall? Breathe No Evil is an extensive overview of chemical and biological weapon agents and the preparation and products that you need to be in possession of to survive this perilous threat. The first chapter will have you holding your breath, while the additional chapters will tell you how to breathe easy and with correct preparations. I'd like to introduce you folks to a good friend of mine from Russia. This is Boris. He's here to tell us all about his biological experiences. Actually, no, he's just here to demonstrate what it looks like to get suited up. Now, this is a regular chemical suit that we still have some of. There still are a few left in the country. The chemical mask, the filter, the hood, the gloves, and the unit that he's holding here is a Red Out 2 suit. It is a poncho that you can slip over either all of this or without this that will also protect you from biochem warfare. But the nice thing about this suit, it will protect you from the 5 different ways that the military has of finding the human body, the signatures through respiration, through heart rate, through temperatures, and whatever else they have. It's designed by a man that used to be part of aerospace, so he knows what's going on here. This is the man that owns the Patriot, or All-American Patriot operation. It's called Red Out 2, so if you want to find out more, just contact us about this. Now that I've got your attention here, folks, I just want you to know that you better be prepared from all aspects. How do you start a fire in the forest? You can't go down to your local 7-Eleven and buy one of these all the time, you know. And how do you start a fire with your flint? How do you know what part of the tree to get? You're not going to have this available to you all the time either. So that's why we have the manuals to study and the tapes to watch, so that you can start getting into this yourself. Otherwise, you're going to be drinking mighty cold water from your little canteen here, and you're not going to be doing much cooking with your stainless steel equipment that you get from your local military surplus store. This container here fits into the pack that you can moisten to keep it cool for yourself, and it fits right over the top of this. So this all fits together in this little container right here to go on your belt. Other items, this is a hammock. It's a small, compact, it doesn't even weigh a pound. When opened up, it can go from tree to tree and give you a very good night's sleep up on the top of the tree where the adversaries have no idea where you are. Objects like this, this is a map reading book to teach you how to read maps by the military. It's a pretty good booklet. It leaves out a lot of bits and pieces that could probably help you in the future. Now, there's a man that used to teach that is a military man that put this whole kit together. His name is Bob. He did an excellent job. It comes with the video, all the orienteering stuff that you need to learn and to actually do the physical things with what's in here. It's a very good method of learning. And we've got bits and pieces. This is a Alice 2-pack. It's a nice compact military pack. It's very strong. It's probably not the most efficient on earth, but this is military, remember. For the money, it's probably one of the best investments you could ever make. We've got all kinds of videotapes that show you how to load these down, so I'm not even going to get into that. Remember, this tape is just to give you an idea of where you must look for what. In addition to the Alice pack, we've got camouflage gear that work like this to throw over whatever you're trying to hide. Some of these come in the form of aluminum strip material to evade radar, which I suggest that you probably get your hands on if you still can. I know the military's been shredding these up instead of trying to get them to the public to get some dollars out of them. They'd rather not have them in our hands because of what they must have intended in the future. Anyhow, there's a lot of bits and pieces. Ammo cans are already on the chopping blocks. They call it Lot 1000 for destruction. So grab what you can while you can, folks. In conclusion, folks, let me add a couple of things here. From the book, The Art of War. War is like fire. Sooner or later, it will burn itself out, unquote. So if you do not have the equipment or the manpower to fight the fire, what do? You get out of the way. Once you realize what's going on in our country, there's a lot of things you must do before fire breaks out. Educate, 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 from the top down. Knowledge, training, and preparedness never guarantees success, but the lack of it guarantees failure. Only failure can be obtained without effort. Now, this is the book that I just quoted from a minute ago. It's called The Art of War. It's, I guess we consider our second little black book. It's extremely powerful with some wonderful information in it. This is what the book is really all about. The paradox of the art of war is in its opposition to war. And as the art of war wars against war, it does so by its own principles. It infiltrates the enemy's lines, uncovers the enemy's secrets, and changes the hearts of the enemy's troops. The Militia of Montana has prepared a booklet. It's called Information and Networking Manual. I'd like to go into it a little bit to show you what it's really about. The section that talks about the networking and the cell structure itself talks about 7-man cells. Now, we're not holding you to a 7-man cell structure. This is just what we suggest, what we're using. The cell structure starts out with a person, the initial cell, and builds up to 7. 3 of the 7 leave to form the next cell when it's time to go beyond that number. The first cell builds up to the number 7 again, but the original people that put the cell together always stay with that cell. The same with the cells that branch off. The original people that started the next cell always stay with the cells. So when you get 3 cells away, the third cell doesn't know who's in the first cell and vice versa. For security reasons, for safety's sakes, you cannot be infiltrated that way. Let me talk some more about infiltration in regards to the cell structure and how to prevent anything from happening. These are the tips that would be mailed to anyone that wants to join our network or cell structure system, or even by picking up our booklets to see how to be secure in their own. Number 1, beware of all strangers. Historically, resistance to tyrants has taken the form of small autonomous groups or cells whose members know and trust one another from long experience. Number 2, beware of the man who is too perfect. He says all the right things. He needs little persuasion, plus he supplies a substantial amount of money. Number 3, beware of handling someone else's firearms, or you will find your fingerprints showing up at a crime scene. Number 4, be double aware of a stranger who proposes illegal activities. You will soon find him testifying against you in a federal court. Number 5, beware of those who draw checks from the enemy. They are very likely to have divided loyalties. Now, I need to interject a little something there. We communicate with people that are in federal, state, and local agencies. Occasionally, well, even more than occasionally, many of them call us and say, remember, we're Americans too. If we think we're vulnerable, trying to put our country back together, imagine what these people must feel like when friendly fire can take them out and no investigation be done. So I'd suggest the best thing that we can do is try to win over the enemy troops, our fellow Americans that are in agencies that would be required to come against what is left of the American way, to win them over to our side. That doesn't mean you have to spill your private information. Number 6, avoid drunks, drug users, and anyone of unstable character. Always choose quality over quantity. Number 7, beware of someone whose intellect, education, and background appears different from those with whom he attempts to associate. Most people interrelate with others of similar interests and backgrounds. 8, do a little investigation. To be sure, the feds can create good cover, but they seldom bother because up to now resistance groups have almost never checked their associates' backgrounds. Number 9, recognize the ruthlessness of tyrants and act accordingly. A government which will mass murder innocent families, including women and children, is not going to play fair with you. Skipping down to the bottom of the brochure here. We must create our own means of informing the masses to cause them to be sympathetic to our cause. Learn to fish in friendly waters. That doesn't mean going out and throwing information in someone's face and screaming at them, here, listen to this, or look at me. No, you have to win them over as though they were friends of yours, because eventually you'll have to work side by side or fight against them. We must be committed to spreading the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Endeavor always to send messages which will ring true in the ears of our countrymen. There is an enormous amount of moral and ideological high ground which has been abandoned by our foes. Claim it and use it. As our cause continues to rapidly grow in number and knowledge, it has not been without pain. We must all bear in mind that we are all volunteers from all walks of life. Each of us must guard against ego eruptions. To be a good leader, you must first be willing to be a servant. Study the book, The Art of War, over and over again. You must earn respect, don't demand it. Keep it simple, building from the bottom up. Private cells and public meetings. Have you ever tried to build a house starting with the shingles first? The militia is as strong as the preparedness of each individual family. So that old statement applies. If you can't eat it, wear it, or shoot it, do you really need it? What good are your guns and bullets if your stomach is empty and your feet are bloody or frozen? Now, going back to the book, The Art of War, even though you are competent, appear incompetent. Though effective, appear ineffective. One with great skills appears inept. The element of surprise, so important for victory with maximum efficiency, depends on knowing others while being unknown to others. So secrecy, misdirection are considered essential arts. So we find ourselves at a crossroads in America today. And this is another quote from The Art of War that depicts it very clearly, I'd say. And the crossroads is turning in our favor as we observe, as we work. Roll rocks down a 10,000-foot mountain and they cannot be stopped. This is because of the mountain and not the rocks. Get people to fight with the courage to win every time, and the strong and the weak unite. This is because of the momentum and not the individuals. Which leads me to a topic that's being started here in America all over again, to put America back together. Many people don't want to be part of the militia movement or out in the open with it, but they certainly want to expose the evil that's going on in our land. So this new concept that's come along that you can get in contact through us if you wish is called the Un-American Activities Investigation Commission. It is tearing up the drug runners, which are the fosterers for the funding for the New World Order. Remember, out of chaos shall come the New World Order. We don't want chaos, and we sure don't want the New World Order. So let's put our country back together. If we don't like the laws that are being passed, let's put our country back together so they don't have to be passed. The only reason they are justifying doing these laws is because of the crime that's out there. So let's prevent the crime. Let's stop it from happening. Let's expose the evil, whether it be in the government or out, and stop it now, folks. Pitch in and help. Thank you.